fascinating to me how functional these beds are. You get into thinking this is not going to work. Look at how many gaping holes are, and then I'm like, wait a minute, I have plastic or paper bags, and now I have a bed. And by the time it sinks, those roots are going to be so interwoven into the wood itself that as it sinks, it will still have enough to hold it into the cage instead of it falling out the side. Even though it just looks like garbage, it just looks like there's no way that's going to work. You're going to have air pockets. In the end, it always works.
Are you telling me or the camera?
You.
Oh. Well, that was beautiful for the camera.
Okay, so I had all these paper bags stuck down into the bottom of my feeding basket. That's usually what I do with cardboard, is I just stash it somewhere till I need it. What I do wish is I wish that I had quite a bit of rabbit manure to put in here. There is a fertilizer in this, but it is a commercial chemical fertilizer, and so it's not actually going to turn the wood into soil. All it's going to do is sit on the top and give the roots somewhere to live. So keep that in mind if you're not using manure. Keep that in mind that if you're using a chemical fertilizer, you're not creating soil. You're just feeding the plants. If you're using rabbit manure or chicken manure or compost, something that has some good bacteria in it, then you're creating soil, because that bacteria is going to go down into the mulch and it'll start turning it into soil. But again, no rabbits, no livestock, no manure.
No bueno.
No more?
No bueno. No good.
No good? And I just watered these guys really well. They had been suffering a little bit, and I don't actually remember what everybody is. Do we have any milk jugs left?
Go make one.
Like, are they clear or are they the white plastic?
Clear.
Okay. Yes, I would love it if you'd go make one. I'm actually going to water that one really quick. She looked a little dry. There we go. Okay. So I do have some tomatoes in here. I think I'm going to put them in the other hotbed, not this one. Just because it's going to be warmer over there. I would like to put some tomatoes over here. I don't know what the wood will do to them though. I am a little concerned about that. I overplant because I know that some are going to die, and seeds are so inexpensive that it makes more sense to me to overplant than to worry about not having enough seeds when the time comes that I need them to be mature. Okay, so I'm going to put one set of tomatoes in. So here's my tomatoes. Okay, so if you're going to have a frost, you're going to put the cap on. If you are not frosting, then you want to leave the cap off. And you're going to put little clips in it, and what those are going to do is hold it down in a wind. So we're not supposed to freeze for a bit, so I'm going to put this over my tomato.
So we're not going to freeze pretty much again.
Well, but it is something you're going to need to keep an eye on. Okay, until I get some pins, that'll have to do. All it's really doing is holding the soil in place until the roots can get into the wood. I'm really concerned that I don't have more rabbit manure. I'm concerned that the wood chips are going to start stealing nitrogen from the plants. So this one is probably going to need some chemical fertilizer over time. This is all the rabbit and chicken manure from that front bed. I'm going to lay it down, and so I have several different ways I'm planting here. Some of them are in potting soil, some of them are in boxes, and this one I'm going to put this low down to protect the roots from the wood and see if that makes a difference. So there's 3 different methods of planting just in this bed. So that was uncomposted chicken manure. So I don't really want to touch it with my hands. It probably did warm up in the front, but uncomposted. It's mixed in with a lot of leaves and other carbon. And so we'll see what happens. I'm going to put some planting medium over the top, and we'll just have to see what happens. So this mix is perlite and peat moss, and then I'm going to take some of the fertilizer that's over at My Gardener and use it in there because it does have microbes and bacteria and all sorts of good stuff in it. And I prefer not to use chemical fertilizers because of that. I want living soil, not just a planting base that has food in it. I want the soil itself to be alive. So here is my peat moss. Now, I overplant, and then if I have a failure, what I'll do is I'll take from those overplantings, those things that need to be thinned, and I'll put them into the place of whatever isn't succeeding. So I planted the watermelons in here a week ago. I haven't seen anything come up. It might be a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of these extra onion plants that I have and plant them in the box just in case the watermelon never comes up. I know exactly where the watermelon and the tomatoes and the zucchini were planted. I know where they are, so I won't plant there. I'll give them some time. But I'm going to go ahead and use my space, and even if they don't get to be mature onions, we can use them as green onions. Oh, there's one. Fertilizer, garden fertilizer. And the reason it's good is because it has micronutrients, beneficial bacteria, and fungi, which means that it isn't just fertilizer. It also should have things in it that help break down carbon. So you got bone meal, green sand, potash, kelp meal, blood meal, poultry manure, urea, which is urine, feather meal, cottonseed meal, dolomitic lime, all these other fun things. Very happy with it. So I've already put it in because my camera shut down, but I put it in the spot where I didn't have rabbit manure. So this spot has duck manure, that spot has chemical fertilizer, and this one has the trifecta in it as a kind of a study to see how they do. And again, it's at my gardener. It's where I get my heritage seeds. They're a small family company and the least expensive company that I have purchased seeds from. They have good variety, but a lot of times by this time in the year they've sold out a lot of their stuff. So if you like it, I'm sorry that they might not have what you actually were looking for. I just realized that with these little babies, I don't trust the keyhole garden nearly as much as I trust the hotbed to be able to keep everybody warm. So I decided instead to put these guys over in the hotbed. Okay, so there we have it. We have the rest of this hotbed planted. We have the Keyhole garden planted. Now I just have that. I don't know if I'm going to get that planted before I leave. If I do, I need to put something pretty big in it. Something that'll take up a lot of space and just be really hungry. So probably it will be squash. But the thing that I find interesting is that back home by now I would be harvesting carrots and radishes in the greenhouse, the unheated greenhouse. And here the weather doesn't get so harsh, but I was still limited by sunlight. So the trees, having not as much sunlight from the trees, the fact that I didn't have the whole greenhouse, I don't know how much of a difference that made. So I think that the temperatures here outside a greenhouse in a hotbed are the same as the temperatures back home inside the greenhouse with a hotbed. So I think that kind of evened the playing field, but what made it not even was that I'm under trees, because things took a little bit of time to get started. They'd germinate and then there just wasn't enough sunlight to get them going. Back home I planted in February. Here I planted in February, and the temperatures back home would have been at times -10 Fahrenheit, -20 Fahrenheit. -20 Fahrenheit would be a very normal winter. And here we got down into the 20s, and so it would have been very similar to the nighttime temperatures inside the greenhouse with the hotbed going back home. So I don't really know. But I'm happy with how it looks. We have basil, we have peas. I'm going to put the cover over it now. And again, the reason I like doing this is that you can use whatever you have on hand. Really, you just need something to hold the mulch in, and you need some form of accelerant, whether that be manure. You can also use lawn fertilizer, really high ammonium sulfate, very high nitrogen. You can use that. But I never had as good a result with using the chemical fertilizers as I did with the rabbit manure. So take that and do with it what you will. Bacteria eating the carbon here. Now I'm going to get a little bit of water on them. If I start to see that the water is dripping down on the sides, I will stop putting water on it, because what will happen is that water will come down off the sides and it'll start to water the weeds that are underneath the straw, and then you will have weed problems. It's all just strictly rabbit manure, cardboard, straw, that kind of thing. As I continue to charge this, I will always use rabbit manure tea. It just, even though I have the manure here on top that kind of filters down a little bit, it does need to have the actual fertilized water going into it in order to... We're going to come in and set up some of these. These are just, I think they were 10 or 15 gauge wire. We bought it in a roll and I just cut it to length. And I use these to hold plastic and frost cloth. We're thinking about it on this side. Over here, the onions are just fine, and then I have the bulb onions in the... And there we go. This is enough for me to wilt for tacos. And I have tied back the peas today. I have a lot of other things trying to go to seed. I do want to get some seed, but I'm kind of thinking I'd rather do it out in the main garden rather than in here, because once things go to seed, they get really big and they start taking up a lot of sunlight and a lot of space. This one, I put the coconut core that had the chemical fertilizer in it on top of the rabbit manure. This one, I mixed the rabbit manure in. This one does not have rabbit manure in it. It has layers of goat bedding, wood chips, and wool. This is the latest one planted, and it looks fine for how old it is. We'll have to wait and see how things go with the wool and the rabbit, or the wool and the goat as opposed to the rabbit manure. But that's the difference between them. Rabbit manure mixed in without any chemical fertilizer. chemical fertilizer with the rabbit manure underneath, I would doubt that any of the roots have actually reached the rabbit manure yet. I have watered this one with Miracle Grow since it already had the chemical fertilizer in it. I just wanted to see the difference. So rabbit manure, Miracle Grow. And this one we have yet to see. Can you see the asparagus? Can you see it? I threw seeds in here last year. I didn't even put in crowns. Packages and packages of seeds. It's happy underneath the comfrey.